Locked in his own house, a sick millionaire begins to wither under the care of his new wife. Everything changes when a 7-year-old girl, his own daughter, sees the stepmother replacing his medicine with suspicious pills and whispers, "That's not your medicine." What he discovers is shocking. Behind the tall iron gates of Blackwood Manor in Greenwich, Connecticut, lived Maxwell "Max" Bennett, a 35-year-old heir to a logistics empire that spanned 3 continents. Once a vibrant businessman whose laughter filled the grand halls of the estate, Max now sat confined to a wheelchair, his body betraying him through a rare degenerative neuromuscular condition that had progressed rapidly in recent months. The manor, with its Georgian columns and perfectly manicured hedges, projected wealth and stability to the outside world. But inside, tension hung in the air like the expensive crystal chandeliers. Since losing his first wife Caroline to an unexpected illness 2 years ago, Max had remarried. Audrey Bennett, with her Harvard education and East Coast pedigree, had stepped seamlessly into the role of lady of the manor, managing Max's care with what appeared to be devoted precision. "Darling, it's time for your medication," Audrey would say each morning. Her voice as smooth as the silk scarves she always wore. Her smile never quite reached her eyes as she handed him the small brown pills that supposedly slowed his disease's progression. Within the sprawling estate lived 2 7-year-old girls from vastly different worlds. Emily, Max's daughter, with her blonde curls and cautious demeanor, was the heiress to the Bennett fortune. She moved through the mansion's corridors with the comfort of belonging, yet felt increasingly distant from her father, despite living under the same roof. "When will Daddy get better?" Emily would ask Audrey, who would pat the girl's head with manicured fingers. "Your father's condition is complicated, sweetie. We just need to trust Dr. Peterson." The other child, Olivia Williams, was the daughter of Grace, the household's head housekeeper. Olivia possessed observant brown eyes that missed little, and a notebook she carried everywhere. Unlike Emily's private school uniforms, Olivia wore simple clothes yet carried herself with quiet dignity. The staff quarters were her domain, though she was permitted to play in designated areas of the property. Despite their different backgrounds, the girls had formed an unlikely friendship, cemented during afternoons in the greenhouse, where they could speak freely away from adult supervision. "Your stepmom looks at people funny," Olivia whispered one day as they sat among the orchids. "My mom says we should always be extra polite around her." Emily nodded, pulling her knees to her chest. "She's different when Dad's not watching. She makes the room feel cold." Mrs. Jenkins, the elderly housekeeper who had served the Bennett family for 3 decades, watched the household with wary eyes. She had witnessed the swift courtship between Max and Audrey. How quickly the new Mrs. Bennett had dismissed longtime staff and installed her own people, particularly Dr. Peterson, who visited almost daily. One rainy afternoon, Emily crept to her father's study, where Max sat staring out at the stormy gardens. His movements were more limited now, his speech sometimes slurring. "Daddy," Emily said, climbing onto the ottoman beside his wheelchair, "are you feeling okay today?" Max's eyes, still sharp despite his failing body, focused on his daughter. With effort, he lifted a trembling hand to her cheek. "My sunshine," he managed. "I'm just very tired these days." "It's the new medicine, isn't it?" Emily asked, her young face serious. "You weren't this tired before." A shadow passed across Max's face. "Emily," he whispered, his voice dropping so low she had to lean in, "I need you to be very observant. Some things in this house aren't what they seem." Before he could say more, Audrey swept into the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "There you are, Emily. You're missing your piano lesson. And Max, it's time for your next dose." As Emily reluctantly left, she glanced back to see her stepmother measuring liquid from an unmarked bottle into her father's water. Something about the secretive way Audrey checked over her shoulder made Emily's stomach tighten with worry. That night, Emily snuck to the servants' quarters, tapping gently on Olivia's door. "I need your help," she whispered when her friend appeared. "Something's wrong with my dad, and I think it has to do with Audrey." Olivia hesitated, then pulled Emily inside, closing the door softly behind them. "My mom says we shouldn't get involved in grown-up business. But what if my dad's in danger?" Emily asked, her blue eyes wide with fear. Little did they know, their whispered conversation would set in motion events that would shake the foundations of Blackwood Manor and reveals secrets buried beneath its polished veneer. The following afternoon, while her mother cleaned the West Wing, Olivia wandered the quiet corridors of Blackwood Manor. She carried her sketchbook, stopping occasionally to draw details that caught her eye: the ornate doorknobs, a crack in an antique vase, the way sunlight filtered through stained glass windows. Drawing was her way of processing the world, capturing things adults often missed. Passing Max's bedroom suite, Olivia heard hushed voices. Curiosity pulled her toward the partially open door. Through the crack, she saw Audrey bent over Max's medicine cabinet, her back to the door. Max was absent, likely at his physical therapy session in the East Wing. With precise movements, Audrey removed an amber prescription bottle from the cabinet. Olivia watched, breath held, as Audrey replaced it with an identical one she pulled from her purse. The new bottle contained blue pills instead of the usual brown ones. Audrey's reflection in the mirror showed not the concern of a devoted wife, but a cold calculation that sent chills down Olivia's spine. "That's not his medicine," Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible, but in the silence of the manor even whispers carried. Audrey's head snapped up, her eyes meeting Olivia's in the mirror. For one terrifying moment, they stared at each other, before Olivia's survival instincts kicked in. She bolted down the hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. She ran straight to her mother, who was dusting the library shelves. "Mom!" Olivia gasped, clutching her notebook to her chest. "Mrs. Bennet was switching Mr. Bennet's pills." The new ones were blue, not brown, and Grace Williams dropped her feather duster and gripped her daughter's shoulders, her eyes darting to the doorway to ensure they were alone. "Lower your voice," she hissed. "You must have misunderstood what you saw." "But Mom—" "No, Olivia." Grace's voice was firm but trembling. "Some things in houses like this, we pretend not to see. Do you understand? Do you want us to lose our positions here? Where would we go?" The fear in her mother's eyes shocked Olivia into silence. Grace had raised her alone since her father left when she was a baby. This job at Blackwood Manor, with its staff quarters and health insurance, was their lifeline. "Pretend you saw nothing," Grace insisted, picking up her duster with shaking hands. "Mrs. Bennet is powerful. People listen to her, not to housekeepers and their children." That evening, during their secret meeting in the greenhouse, Olivia told Emily what she had witnessed. Emily's face paled as she connected this to her father's worsening condition. "The new pills started around the same time Dad began getting worse," Emily said, twisting the friendship bracelet on her wrist, a gift from her father on her last birthday. "He can barely hold a spoon now, and sometimes he seems confused, like he doesn't know where he is." "My mom said to forget what I saw," Olivia admitted. "She's scared we'll get fired." Emily grabbed her friend's hands. "But we can't just do nothing. This is my dad, Olivia." Over the next days, they observed changes in Max that confirmed their suspicions. His speech became more slurred, his episodes of confusion more frequent. Dr. Peterson visited daily now, nodding gravely as Audrey explained the progression of symptoms. No one questioned when he increased Max's dosage. Mrs. Jenkins, who had been watching from the shadows, approached the girls as they whispered together in the garden. "You two look like you're plotting something," the elderly housekeeper said, lowering herself onto the stone bench beside them. Her arthritis made her movements slow, but her mind remained sharp as ever. Emily and Olivia exchanged glances, uncertain whether to trust her. Mrs. Jenkins sighed, her weathered face softening. "I've served the Bennet family since before your father was born, Emily. I changed his diapers, bandaged his skinned knees, and watched him grow into a fine man. Nothing happens in this house without my knowing about it." "Then you know something's wrong with Daddy's medicine," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I've had my suspicions," Mrs. Jenkins admitted. "Your father's decline has been too rapid, even for his condition, and Mrs. Bennet's attentiveness seems calculated." Olivia opened her notebook, revealing a careful drawing of Audrey replacing the medicine bottles. The detail was remarkable: the labels, Audrey's expression, the distinctive blue pills. Mrs. Jenkins studied the drawing, her expression hardening. "Children see what adults often dismiss," she murmured. "But accusations against someone of Mrs. Bennet's standing require proof, not just the observations of a 7-year-old. "How do we get proof?" Emily asked, desperation in her voice. The housekeeper's eyes gleamed with determination. "We watch. We document. And when the moment is right, we act. That night, as Audrey administered Max's evening medication, Emily stood in the doorway, watching intently. Max's gaze met hers over Audrey's shoulder, and Emily saw something there she hadn't noticed before. Not just weakness, but fear. He was trying to tell her something with his eyes alone. As his condition deteriorated further, Emily and Olivia knew they were running out of time. They needed to discover what those blue pills really were, and they needed to do it before it was too late for Max Bennett. The grandfather clock in the main hall struck midnight as Olivia tiptoed through the darkened corridors of Blackwood Manor. She had waited until her mother's breathing grew deep and steady before slipping out of their quarters. The moonlight streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the expensive Persian rugs. Emily was waiting by the grand staircase, clutching her stuffed rabbit, a childhood comfort she couldn't bring herself to abandon. "Did anyone see you?" she whispered. Olivia shook her head. "We need to check your dad's bathroom. If Mrs. Bennett is throwing away the real medicine, there might be evidence." The girls made their way to the master suite, carefully avoiding the third step from the top that always creaked. Max's bedroom door was ajar, and they could hear his labored breathing inside. Emily fought back tears at the sound, her once vibrant father reduced to this fragile state. In the adjoining bathroom, the girls searched meticulously, careful not to disturb anything noticeably. Olivia, ever observant, spotted something gleaming at the bottom of the metallic waste bin. An empty blue pill bottle, partially crushed and buried beneath tissues. "Emily, look," she whispered, carefully extracting the bottle. The label had been removed, but a small residue of adhesive remained. "This isn't from any pharmacy." Emily examined the bottle. "Dad's regular medicine comes from Hartford Medical Pharmacy. This is different." Just as they were examining their find, a soft voice froze them in place. What an unusual time for children to be exploring. Audrey stood in the doorway, wrapped in an elegant silk robe, her face eerily calm despite the late hour. The girls jumped, Olivia instinctively hiding the bottle behind her back. I just needed to use the bathroom," Emily stammered. "Mine is broken." "With your little friend from the servants' quarters?" Audrey's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How resourceful of you. And what's that you're hiding, Olivia?" Before Olivia could answer, Audrey crossed the room with surprising speed, gripping the child's wrist. "Children shouldn't play with dangerous things," she said, prying the bottle from Olivia's fingers. "Medicine bottles can have residue, very harmful to curious little girls." Emily stepped forward, protective instinct overcoming fear. "That's not Dad's regular medicine." Audrey's expression hardened momentarily, before smoothing into practiced concern. "Emily, sweetheart, your father's condition requires many different treatments, adult matters that children can't possibly understand." She tucked the bottle into her robe pocket. "Now both of you back to bed. And Olivia, perhaps your mother should know about your midnight wanderings." The threat was clear in her tone. The girls retreated, but not before Emily caught a glimpse of triumph in her stepmother's eyes. The following morning, Grace was summoned to Audrey's private sitting room. She returned to the servants' quarters with a pale face and shaking hands. "We're being transferred," she told Olivia, avoiding her daughter's questioning gaze. "Mrs. Bennett thinks we'd be more suitable at the Bennett's Lake House in New Hampshire. We leave at the end of the week, but that's hours away," Olivia protested. "And Emily needs me." "Enough!" Grace snapped, then immediately softened, kneeling to take her daughter's hands. "Olivia, please understand. People like us, we survive by knowing our place. The Bennetts have been good employers. The lake house is beautiful, and you'll attend a better school there." "But something wrong is happening here," Olivia insisted. "Mrs. Bennett is doing something to Mr. Bennett. His medicine—" "Stop." Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "Mrs. Bennett mentioned you were spreading stories. Do you understand how dangerous that is? She said she was being generous, not dismissing us entirely." The fear in her mother's eyes silenced Olivia, but her resolve only strengthened. That afternoon, the girls met in their secret spot in the greenhouse. Emily was in tears. "You can't leave," she said. "We have to help Dad before it's too late." Olivia pulled out her notebook and flipped to a new drawing, a detailed floor plan of the manor's east wing. "Mrs. Bennett has a private office here," she explained, pointing. "Emily, has your dad ever mentioned anything about suspecting something?" Emily hesitated. Once, when Audrey was out at a charity luncheon, Dad managed to write something. His hands were shaking so badly, but he insisted. He wrote, not illness, something else. Then he hid it in his desk drawer. But the next day the note was gone. Maybe he wrote other notes, Olivia suggested. Important people always keep records. Mrs. Jenkins joined them, carrying a silver tray with cookies and lemonade, her excuse for visiting the greenhouse. Your transfer papers came through, she told Olivia grimly. Mrs. Bennet had them expedited. You leave Friday. That's only 2 days away, Emily cried. Mrs. Jenkins lowered her voice. There's something else. The driver mentioned that Mrs. Bennet has been meeting privately with Dr. Peterson at a cafe in town. And she's scheduled a consultation with a specialist about having Mr. Bennet institutionalized, claiming his mental capacity is deteriorating too quickly to manage at home. The girls exchanged horrified glances. We need to search her office tonight, Emily decided. Dad used to say important things are always written down somewhere. Mrs. Jenkins hesitated. That's dangerous. Mrs. Bennet keeps that room locked. Olivia reached into her pocket and pulled out a key. Not anymore, she said with a small smile. I made an impression in clay when she left it on the hallway table yesterday. My mom's boyfriend taught me how to make copies before he left. That night, armed with their copied key and desperate determination, Emily and Olivia prepared for what could be their last chance to uncover the truth before being separated forever. Outside, storm clouds gathered over Greenwich, as if the heavens themselves sensed the drama unfolding within the walls of Blackwood Manor. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Emily and Olivia stood before the ornate oak door of Audrey's private office. The entire house was quiet. Audrey had gone to a charity gala in Manhattan and wouldn't return until after midnight. Max was asleep in his suite under the watchful eye of his night nurse, a recent hire who seemed more loyal to Audrey than to her patient. Are you sure this will work? Emily whispered as Olivia carefully inserted the copied key into the lock. Olivia's hand trembled slightly, but her determination never wavered. We have to try. The lock clicked and the door swung open to reveal a pristine office decorated in shades of cream and navy. Bookshelves lined one wall, while a massive mahogany desk dominated the center of the room. Everything was meticulously organized, files arranged by color, pens aligned perfectly. A laptop closed precisely in the center of the desk. We need to be careful not to move anything, Olivia cautioned, setting her small flashlight on the edge of the desk. She'll notice if things are out of place. The girls searched methodically, Emily checking the obvious places like drawers and files, while Olivia, with her eye for detail, examined the less obvious spots. 20 minutes of careful searching yielded nothing suspicious. Maybe we were wrong, Emily said, her hope faltering. Olivia wasn't ready to give up. Her gaze traveled to the painting behind the desk, a modern abstract that seemed at odds with the traditional decor of the rest of the room. That painting doesn't match, she observed, studying it carefully. Emily joined her. Dad hates abstract art. He always said it looked like someone sneezed on canvas. Olivia reached out and gently pressed the edge of the frame. To their amazement, it swung forward, revealing a hidden wall safe. Of course she has a secret safe, Emily whispered, but we don't know the combination. Olivia bit her lip, thinking. In movies, people use birthdays or important dates. When is her birthday? March 15th, Emily replied. Dad had a huge party for her this year. 315. Olivia tried the numbers, but the safe remained locked. What other dates might be important to her? Emily thought hard. The day she married Dad, October 9th last year. They tried 1009, but still no success. Wait, Olivia said suddenly. Your dad's company, when was it founded? Emily's eyes widened. Bennett Logistics was founded on May 12, 1985. Dad has the original incorporation papers framed in his study. He's really proud of it. They tried 51285, and the safe clicked open. Inside were several folders, a small jewelry box, and a leather-bound journal. Emily reached for a folder labeled Maxwell Medical, while Olivia carefully extracted the journal. The folder contained medical reports and what appeared to be private lab results, documents that never went into Max's official medical record. Many pages had notes in Audrey's elegant handwriting, detailing dosages and observed symptoms. She's been tracking how sick Dad gets after taking those pills, Emily whispered. horror dawning on her face. Meanwhile, Olivia had opened the journal to find daily entries in Audrey's handwriting. She flipped through, stopping on a page from 3 months earlier. The new compound is more effective than I anticipated. M's motor skills deteriorated 30% faster this month. Dr. P is concerned about detection, but I assured him this substance is virtually untraceable in standard tests. The progression appears natural for his condition. 2 more months should be sufficient for the legal arrangements to be completed. Olivia continued reading, her hands shaking. The Sinclair girl might become problematic. She notices too much for a housekeeper's daughter. Will arrange transfer before month's end. Sinclair girl, Emily questioned. That must be the previous housekeeper's daughter, Olivia realized. Mrs. Jenkins mentioned a family that left suddenly last year. As they continued searching, Emily discovered a sealed envelope at the bottom of the safe. It had been opened, then carefully resealed. Inside was a letter written in shaky handwriting, Max's handwriting. To whoever finds this, Emily read aloud, her voice trembling, I fear my suspicions may be correct. Shortly after marrying Audrey, my condition began deteriorating rapidly. The timeline doesn't match what my specialist predicted. I've noticed my symptoms worsen after taking the medication she insists on administering personally. I've tried to alert Dr. Mitchell, but he was mysteriously replaced by Dr. Peterson, who dismisses my concerns as paranoia caused by my illness. If you're reading this, I may have been right all along. Please protect Emily. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she clutched the letter. Dad knew. He's been trying to tell us. Olivia continued paging through the journal, stopping suddenly at a shocking revelation. Emily, listen to this. It's almost poetic justice that Maxwell Bennett will watch his empire crumble from a wheelchair, just as my father did after Bennett Logistics orchestrated the hostile takeover that destroyed Hartwick Industries 15 years ago. Father never recovered from the humiliation. The Bennett fortune rightfully belongs to the Hartwicks, and I will reclaim it, 1 pill at a time. Hartwick? Emily gasped. Audrey's maiden name is Hartwick. She told Dad she came from old money in Boston. She's been planning this all along, Olivia whispered. She married your dad for revenge. A small notebook tucked inside the journal fell to the floor. As Olivia picked it up, she realized it belonged to someone else. The handwriting was different, more hurried. It was filled with observations similar to Olivia's own. Mrs. H switches the medicine when no one is looking. Mr. B seems worse after blue pills. She watches me when I clean the office. I think she suspects. This must belong to the Sinclair girl, Olivia said. She saw the same things I did. Just then they heard the distant sound of the manor's front door opening. Glancing at the delicate clock on the desk, Emily realized with horror that it was only 10:30 p.m. Audrey had returned early from her event. They quickly replaced everything except Max's letter and a few pages from the journal, which they carefully tore out. As they closed the safe and reset the painting, footsteps echoed in the hallway, approaching the office. There was no time to reach the door. The girls ducked behind the heavy curtains just as the office door swung open. Audrey entered, followed by Dr. Peterson. Their conversation froze the blood in the girls' veins. The lawyers are ready to file the competency papers, Audrey was saying. Once Maxwell is declared mentally incompetent, I'll have full control of the company and his assets as Emily's guardian. And the medication schedule? Dr. Peterson asked. Increase the dosage tomorrow, Audrey replied coldly. I want him completely incoherent for the specialist's evaluation next week. No more delays. Hidden behind the curtains, Emily and Olivia exchanged terrified glances. They now had proof, and they had less than 24 hours to save Max Bennett before it was too late. Morning light spilled across the breakfast room as Audrey sipped her coffee, scrolling through emails on her tablet. Her face betrayed no hint of the previous night's sinister conversation. Across the table, Emily pushed scrambled eggs around her plate, trying to appear normal despite her racing heart. Not hungry, dear? Audrey asked, glancing up with practiced concern. Just tired, Emily mumbled. Well, you should eat something. It's a big day. The specialist is coming tomorrow instead of next week. Isn't that wonderful? Dr. Peterson pulled some strings. The sooner we get your father the specialized care he needs, the better. Emily nearly dropped her fork. They had less time than they thought. After breakfast, Emily slipped away to the greenhouse where Olivia and Mrs. Jenkins were waiting. Grace had been sent to town on errands, a transparent attempt by Audrey to separate Olivia from her mother's protective influence. "They've moved up the specialist's visit to tomorrow," Emily said breathlessly. "We need to act now." Mrs. Jenkins nodded grimly. "I've contacted Mr. Donovan, your father's attorney. He's always been loyal to Max, not the company. He's agreed to meet us, but he needs concrete evidence. We have Dad's letter and pages from Audrey's journal," Emily said, pulling the folded papers from her sock. "And I have these," Olivia added, revealing the empty pill bottle they'd recovered from the trash earlier that morning, plus pictures of the real pill bottles in Mr. Bennett's medicine cabinet. Mrs. Jenkins examined their evidence. "This is compelling, but we need one more thing. Actual proof of what's in those blue pills." "How do we get that?" Emily asked. "The pills need to be analyzed by an independent lab," Mrs. Jenkins explained. "My nephew works at Greenwich Medical Center. He can rush the tests if we get him a sample today." Olivia's face fell. "But how do we get the pills?" "Mrs. Bennett will notice if any are missing." A voice from the greenhouse doorway startled them. "Perhaps I can help with that." They turned to find Robert Donovan, the Bennett family attorney, standing there. Tall and distinguished with silver hair, he had been Max's friend since college. "Mr. Donovan!" Emily ran to him. "You came!" "When Mrs. Jenkins called me with your concerns, I cancelled my meetings." His expression was grave. "I've had my own suspicions about Mrs. Bennett for months. Max tried to tell me something was wrong during my last visit, but Mrs. Bennett hardly left us alone." They showed him their evidence. As he read Max's letter, his face darkened. "This is worse than I imagined," he said quietly. "There's something else you should know. Last week, Audrey approached me privately, suggesting a partnership. She implied that after Max was institutionalized, she would need someone to help manage the Bennett holdings." His voice hardened. "She even made romantic overtures. I played along to learn more about her plans." "Did she mention Hartwick Industries?" Olivia asked. Donovan's eyebrows rose. "How did you know about that connection?" "Very few people remember that old corporate feud." They showed him the journal entry. Donovan shook his head in disbelief. Edward Hartwick blamed Max's father for his company's collapse, even though it was Hartwick's own financial mismanagement that caused the downfall. The Bennett acquisition actually saved hundreds of jobs. "So this is all about revenge," Mrs. Jenkins murmured. "And money," Donovan added. "The Bennett fortune is substantial." They formulated a plan. Donovan would request an emergency court order for an independent medical evaluation based on their evidence. Mrs. Jenkins would get the pills to her nephew for analysis. The girls would stay with Max, ensuring Audrey couldn't accelerate her plan. As they dispersed, Grace returned from town, her face ashen. She rushed to Olivia, clutching her shoulders. "Pack your things," she whispered urgently. "Mrs. Bennett has changed our departure to tonight. A car is coming at 8 p.m. Before Olivia could protest, they heard Audrey's voice echo through the intercom system. "Grace Williams, please report to my study immediately." Grace squeezed Olivia's hand. "Stay with Mrs. Jenkins. Don't go to our quarters alone." Fear laced her words as she hurried away. When Grace entered Audrey's study, she found her employer seated calmly behind her desk. "Grace," Audrey began, her voice silky smooth, "you've been a valuable member of our staff." "Thank you, ma'am," Grace responded cautiously, "which is why I'm concerned about your daughter's imagination." Audrey's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Children can misinterpret what they see. It would be unfortunate if Olivia's stories caused problems, especially if those stories followed you to New Hampshire." The threat hung in the air. Grace straightened her spine. "Mrs. Bennett, I've always taught my daughter to tell the truth." "Truth is subjective, isn't it?" Audrey rose, circling the desk. "It would be tragic if anything happened to Olivia. The lake house is so isolated, far from hospitals, from help. I'd hate for her safety to be compromised." Grace felt cold fear grip her heart. For years she had stayed silent, kept her head down, focused on survival. But in that moment, staring into the calculated malice in Audrey's eyes, something broke free inside her. "Are you threatening my daughter, Mrs. Bennett?" Audrey's expression hardened. "I'm ensuring you understand the consequences of disloyalty." Grace took a deep breath. "I understand perfectly." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "My daughter may notice things, Mrs. Bennett, but so do I. Like the unmarked packages that arrive for you each month, or your late-night meetings with Dr. Peterson, or how you replace Mr. Bennett's medication." Audrey's face contorted with rage, but before she could respond, the study door burst open. Donovan stood there, flanked by 2 police officers and a distinguished woman in a lab coat. "Audrey Bennett," Donovan announced formally. "This is Dr. Eleanor Hayes from the State Medical Board, here with a court order for an independent examination of Maxwell Bennett and all his medications." "This is absurd," Audrey sputtered. "My husband is under excellent care." "The court disagrees," Donovan replied calmly, handing her the order. "Especially after reviewing evidence that his medication may have been tampered with." "What evidence?" Audrey demanded. "The blue pills from your husband's medicine cabinet contain a compound that accelerates neurological deterioration," Dr. Hayes stated. "It's consistent with Mr. Bennett's symptoms, but inconsistent with his actual diagnosis. The lab confirmed it an hour ago." As the officers began reading Audrey her rights, Emily and Olivia watched from the doorway, hands clasped tightly together. The nightmare was ending. 3 months later, Blackwood Manor was transformed. With Audrey facing charges of attempted medical fraud and Max receiving proper treatment, the household had found its balance again. Max's condition had stabilized. While he would never fully recover, the progression had slowed significantly. He had regained some speech and movement, enough to actively participate in Emily's life again and resume limited oversight of his company. In the sunlit morning room, Max sat in his wheelchair, watching Emily and Olivia build an elaborate fairy village in the corner. Grace entered with a tea tray, smiling at the scene. "Dad," Emily called, "come see what we made." Max wheeled himself over, a task that would have been impossible months ago. "It's magnificent," he said, his speech slower but clear. "Worthy of architectural awards." "Mr. Bennett," Olivia said hesitantly, "I finished the picture book of our adventure. Would you like to see it?" "I would be honored," he replied warmly. Olivia presented him with a hand-bound book filled with her detailed drawings chronicling their investigation. On the final page she had written, "Sometimes the smallest eyes see the biggest truths." Max studied it thoughtfully. "You know, Olivia, you have an extraordinary talent. Both of you girls showed remarkable courage and intelligence. Just like characters in the books we read," Emily said. "No," Max corrected gently. "Much braver. Real-life heroes." Later that afternoon, as Grace helped prepare dinner, Max approached her with a business proposition. "I'd like to establish a scholarship foundation," he explained, "for children with observational gifts like Olivia, talents that might otherwise go unnoticed. Would you help me develop it?" Grace, who had been offered a permanent position as household manager, smiled. "It would be my honor." In the garden, the 2 girls sat beneath an oak tree, writing in matching journals, a gift from Max. The walls that had once separated their worlds had crumbled, replaced by a bond forged through courage and truth. "Do you think we'll have more adventures?" Emily asked, sketching a butterfly that had landed nearby. Olivia smiled, her pencil capturing the same butterfly from a different angle. "I think we will, but hopefully less dangerous ones." The butterfly took flight, soaring upward past the stone walls that surrounded Blackwood Manor, walls that no longer felt like barriers, but like protective arms around a home, where truth had finally found its place in the sunlight.